this weekend, a fight that could be on the main card of a pay-per-view. It feels like a video game fight. We have Hurricane Shane Burgos taking on Belleuil, Quebec, Canada's own Charles Jourdain. Matt, I love this fight. You have the hometown guy representing New York in Shane Burgos. Big time opportunity to take on the Canadian striker of Charles Jourdain. And for both of these guys, incredible success in the UFC's octagon. This is Jourdain's first ranked opponent in the UFC. And for Hurricane Shane, I mean, he went on a 2-fight losing streak. You had to be doing a little bit of soul searching. Like, you look at the losses, Josh Emmett, Edson Barboza, and man,
so much damage.
Phil Swift would have a field day with that. But if you look at it, for Burgos, his last time out, he gets a big time win over Billy Quarantillo, one that kind of levels the boat back out on stormy seas. And for Burgos, I mean, I look at what this guy's been able to dish out and then receive in the UFC, and it's been absolutely insane. You look at it so far, and of the knockdowns, he's been dropped by Calvin Kattar, Josh Emmett, Edson Barboza, and Kurt Holobaugh.
He did submit him, though, immediately after.
Did submit him in that one. He also has knockdowns of his own. He has 6 of them. Charles Jourdain also has 6 knockdowns in his UFC career. And that's just been the craziest part. For Jourdain, comes in, short notice debut, up a weight class against Desmond Green. He gets out wrestled and out veteraned in that fight. A lot of ringmanship in that one. His next time out, performance bonus in Busan, South Korea. Hometown of one Doo-Ho Choi. Charles Jourdain got the bag and finished him in that one. Obviously, again, performance bonus. But, Matt, for Jourdain, this is a guy out of Quebec, and we love Quebec here. Like, I've got a Molson export. The last time I cracked a top on a Molson on this channel, Matt, for a fellow Canadian, we both have Molsons. Matt's got Molson Canadian export. But the last time we did this, it was when Tanner Boser fought Andrei Arlovsky.
How did that fight end?
And Tanner Boser lost. So this is a bad omen for Charles Jourdain on the channel.
Okay, I'm going to make this a much more open-ended prediction and bounce stuff off of you. Way more than I normally do. Because there's 2 different ways that I'm looking at this fight. In one way, Shane Burgos does everything Charles Jourdain done. But he's a little bit more refined with his technique. He doesn't really throw the body kicks. But other than that, both very strike-heavy fighters. They both want to move forward, eat a shot to give a shot. You get the idea. I didn't think Shane Burgos looked good in his Billy Q win, though, and that's just me being honest. I knew a lot of people at that time who were like, hey, did Quarantillo win that fight? And I don't know what the MMA decisions are. I don't care about that website at all, for being honest, but I do know that was a very, very competitive fight, and that was concerning because from the pedestal that Burgos was on at the time, you would think, okay, he lost to Josh Emmett in what was a very close fight until Josh Emmett blew out his knee, and then also dropped Burgos with some of the hardest punches you've ever seen, and he was competitive with Edson until it started to fall apart, but I wasn't thrilled with the performance he put out against Billy Q because I felt like Billy Q was able to outpower him in some of those situations, and that's definitely not how I thought that fight was going to go. Burgos was the one who was kind of playing the pitter-patter, trying to use his movement, and Billy Q was happy to just walk forward, eat punches, and then respond with his own power. So in my mind right now, it's okay. The Shane Burgos even fought like Calvin Kattar. I know that was a few years ago, but that guy would probably be able to knock out Billy Q if he's able to land the same kind of strikes on him. He just didn't seem like he still had that power in his hands, and I'm a little bit concerned because if Burgos isn't at 100%, like 100% Shane Burgos is probably, let's say, 7% better than Charles Jourdain. There's not a lot of room for error being left right there, though, and I do worry about what version of Shane Burgos we're going to get. Like, do you think he is starting to fade because of some of these wars? Because there is a part of me that thinks the tread is starting to wear down on the tire.
I mean, you look at that fight for Shane Burgos and we consider the losses. So his fight against Josh Emmett was 2 years ago. His fight against Edson Barboza, he took a year off, so that was a year ago. His fight against Billy Q, 7 months and 2 weeks ago. So refining things, sharpening the sword at Tiger Schulman's. When you watch Shane Burgos, like, he has submission wins over Bill Algeo. He's got a submission win over Kurt Holobaugh in the UFC. That definitely holds water. But you look at Shane Burgos, boxing combinations, crisp striking, long extension. You look at it in this fight. He's got, 6.5 inches of reach, and he's got 2 inches of height.
He has a wild build to him.
Yeah, and he's a guy that's very upper body heavy, and he doesn't use a lot of kicks, which is the opposite of Charles Jourdain. When you look at Charles Jourdain, he will switch stances, but when you look at him from southpaw, he throws a lead right hook. He throws kicks to all 3 levels, which we don't see very often. Like, you see somebody that goes to the legs. That's great. You see somebody like Antonina Shevchenko, southpaw, last weekend that only throws, like, axe kicks and modified head kicks to to the head.
That's the way I always think about it. Normally you have kickers who focus on the first two things they can hit, be it top or bottom. They'll do leg and body, or they'll do head and body. Not a lot of people do leg kicks and head kicks and no body attack.
Yeah, but for Jourdain, all three.
Exactly.
So he lands all three. He'll switch it over to orthodox and he'll box a little bit. He'll throw a jab with his left. He'll throw a right cross. But by and large, Jourdain very much is a well-refined striker, but I would say kickboxer, not necessarily boxer. So that's where the interesting clash of strikers comes up in this one.
And this is the other question I was going to ask you. Do you think this could be one of the situations where we see Jourdain only fight out of the southpaw position? Because that body kick is going to be a big factor. And I know Jourdain is a good boxer, but I do not think he can box from the orthodox position to the level of a guy like Shane Burgos. Because again, the only people who have been able to outstrike Shane Burgos is Josh Emmett, who might be the most heavy-handed man in the UFC, regardless of weight class, and Edson Barbosa in what was one of the great fights of all time before he got dropped by what was a very concerning, for being honest, overhand right from Edson. And that was kind of the moment where I was like, okay, is Shane Burgos taking too much damage? And I do think...
was it?
Well, I know, that's the wild thing that it took that long, but it is true. Like, when you go back and look at Shane Burgos' fights, even the ones that he wins, he's taking a lot of punishment in. So there's a world out there where I look at it as, okay, Burgos might be his most refined skill set. Like, he won't get any better, he won't get any worse. But Charles Jourdain might not have as much wear and tear on him at this point. So let's say both these guys do decide, okay, we're getting into a war, like one of those stand down Max Holloway, Ricardo Lamas type fights. If Shane Burgos is not at 100% of his durability, that's where Jourdain could land one of those body kicks, fall down, and he likes to plant off his left leg after he throws that body kick and wing an overhand left. If he hits Shane Burgos with one of those types of shots, I do think Jourdain has enough power to put him down and away.
And for Jourdain, we've seen these fights where, like the Joshua Culibao fight, where he really couldn't figure it out. Like, he almost got the finish, then he didn't, then he almost got finished himself. He comes back, he wins the fight against Marcelo Rojo, and the two fights that I want to point out, then he loses to Julian Rose and gets finished. That was only 2 fights ago. Almost 6 months ago, he beats Andre Ewell. The fight against Marcelo Rojo and the fight against Andre Ewell, Charles Jourdain looked like a guy that would give ranked fighters problems. That's why he's in this fight.
I would agree 100%.
But in some other fights, the volume isn't quite there. The aggression isn't quite there. He just can't really figure it out. I think he's leveled up the last 2 fights. Obviously, we talk a lot about Charles Jourdain, not just in Jourdain fights. He's one of our guys like Douglas Silva de Andrade, or pick your other fighter. But we use him a lot as an example in these fights.
That's the thing, not to cut you off, but a lot of people like to ask, okay, who are your favorite fighters? What are fighters you don't like? I don't have a personal feeling on any single fighter. I just like them if they're entertaining, and I probably don't like them if they're not entertaining. So by that measurement, you can understand why we are so excited for this fight.
So both of these guys, different strikers, but they bring obviously different things to the cage. Burgos fights at a higher pace typically, but this is the craziest thing. Burgos has a significant strike differential of 1.27, Jourdain 1.07, so not that different. This is where the numbers actually play in, and these guys have enough accumulated time in the octagon that I actually do figure these in. 7.95 to 6.69 received for Burgos, the strikes landed to receive per minute significantly. And if you look at it for Jourdain, 5.60 to 4.53, so crazy volume given and taken for both these guys. Very, very entertaining. We look at the odds. Burgos open minus 150, minus 195 for Jourdain, open plus 130, plus 160. We have a look at the Tapology votes. Surprise to us there, to you, Matt. Well, Canada and Quebec represent. I'm going to say over under 70% Burgos.
I'm going to say under. I think it'll be more 50-50.
It's going to be 50-50. Oh, just under. 678 total votes, 69% Burgos, 77% by decision, 14% by knockout. For the 31% that have Jourdain, 59% by decision, 29% by knockout. Not a lot of people factoring in the submission. Jourdain got it his last time out. He's struggling with the takedowns against Lando Venata, and then he just synced that submission up quite nicely. So that added component out of Jourdain, a guy who is from Beloit originally, trains at a Brazilian top team in Montreal, as well as Sherbatov Gym with Ultimate Fighter alum Yoni Sherbatov over by Le Carrefour de Laval in Laval. And if you're a Canadian that grew up and went to middle school, obviously it was a big opportunity to go to space camp. That's just around the block from Sherbatov Gym.
That was so much fun.
That was the greatest time. And Matt, I wasn't drinking Molson Exports back then, but if I was, I'd be pretty metal. I don't endorse that at all. don't underage drink. But Matt, in this fight, we have
this went all sorts of ways.
We have Charles Jourdain with such a varied striking array, and we have Shane Burgos with the upper volume in the boxing. What's the pick here?
I don't think the best version of Shane Burgos is going to lose to Charles Jourdain. I just don't know what version of Shane Burgos we're going to get. And I know I brought that up a lot during this episode, but it really is the truth. When you've seen a guy go through the amount of wars that Shane Burgos has, you do leave a part of you in there. I know that's a very cliche thing to say, but that's something they say in every single time there's a really wild boxing fight is, hey, they did leave a part of themselves in there, and they're not going to be the same fighter afterwards. There's about 7 fights of Shane Burgos that you could apply that mentality to, and for Jourdain, he is cut from that same cloth, but at least he is a little bit younger in his career to where I don't think he has taken the same level of damage. Now, based off what I just said, you're probably thinking Matt's going to pick Charles Jourdain, but I do think that the boxing of Shane Burgos is going to be such a unique challenge for Jourdain. I think that Jourdain is going to have to fight out of that southpaw position a lot more than just switching between the two, because offensively, I do think his southpaw position is much better than his orthodox position, and I'm kind of surprised that he does switch hit as much as he does and not just stick to the one spot. I like the kicks from Jourdain, but I do think that the overwhelming boxing pressure of Shane Burgos is really going to get to Jourdain because, again, that wasn't that long ago that Jourdain got tired fighting Julian Erosa. And I do think he learned from that performance, but still, that wasn't that long ago. And when you look at the guys Jourdain's beat lately, Shane Burgos would definitely beat them. When you look at the guys Shane Burgos has lost to lately, well, Edson Barbosa and Josh Emmett probably both beat Charles Jourdain too. So I think this fight is very fun. It's very well matched, but ever so slightly going to take the favorite in Shane Burgos.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I obviously worry about Shane Burgos' chin. And you watch these two guys fight. When Burgos throws in combination, he'll rip the body and then go to the head. For Charles Jourdain, he'll do the same, but from distance, he'll start with a kick, and then once you bring your defenses down, then he gets to open up with his hand. So for Jourdain, a great opportunity against a ranked opponent. But for me, I like Shane Burgos with the boxing, the combinations, the speed, and the power. We just get to gauge where Burgos is at and if Jourdain can beat that ranked competition to move forward through his career. So great opportunity for both guys. We're going against the Canadian here. Both of us going with New York's own Shane Burgos to get the win. Are we traitors? I mean, I'm wearing a Rough Rider shirt, for goodness sake. And Matt, you're wearing a Mickey Ward shirt.
Yeah,
so
shout out to the OG.
That one doesn't play, but both of us going with Burgos. Let us know in the comment section who you have in this matchup. This is a marquee featherweight fight, but the main event plateaus that. We have Brian Ortega taking on Yair Rodriguez. You're not going to want to miss it, so keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks. We always say,
let's get into it.